Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in Washington. I'm Michael Steele, in for Nicole Wallace. A political earthquake last night signaling trouble for the Republican Party in ruby red Kansas, of all places. For the first time since Roe versus Wade was struck down by the Supreme Court, voters got a chance to weigh in on abortion rights. And by a stunning nearly 17-point margin, Kansas residents rejected a measure that could have led to abortion rights being eliminated from the state constitution. Politico reports this on the fallout of the referendum. Quote, turnout soared in Kansas despite a heat advisory and little else to draw Democrats to the polls. Yet in a state where Trump beat President Joe Biden by nearly 15 percentage points in 2020, the amendment was failing badly in a brushback to Republican legislators who were preparing to move legislation restricting abortion. And if the politics of Roe proved fraught for Republicans in Kansas, it's going to be even more treacherous for the GOP in swingier, more moderate swaths of the country. And here's how abortion rights advocates pulled it off, according to the New York Times. Quote, registered Republicans far outnumbered Democrats in Kansas, and abortion rights activists made explicit appeals to unaffiliated voters and center-right voters. In interviews last week in populous Johnson County, Kansas, a number of voters said they were registered Republicans but opposed the amendment, a dynamic that almost certainly played out across the state, given the margin. The result, which came as a big surprise to everyone, has energized Democrats. Here's what President Biden said today at a signing of the executive order on abortion access.
In a decisive victory, voters made it clear that politicians should not interfere with the fundamental rights of women. And the voters of Kansas sent a powerful signal that this fall the American people will vote to preserve and protect the right and refuse to let them be ripped away by politicians.
Joining our coverage, Ashley Parker, Washington Post senior national political correspondent and an MSNBC political analyst. Also with us, Axios political reporter Alexi McCammon, also an MSNBC contributor, and former Congresswoman and friend Donna Edwards, Democrat from the great state of Maryland. Alexi, let's begin with you. NBC News was in the room last night as the No camp was celebrating. Here's just some of what people were saying.
I'm really proud that our state came through and decisively won. I'm very happy for me. I'm very happy for my daughters and my family.
I'm very proud of our fellow Kansans that stepped up and voted and made their voices known that this was unacceptable and we needed to maintain our freedom of choice in Kansas. Because they were asking us to strip the rights, the privacy rights of 51% of our population.
What's the message that Kansans sent to the rest of the country tonight?
Don't mess with us. Seriously, there's more of us than there are of them who are trying to attack our reproductive rights and freedom.
Euphoria, relief, excitement. I can imagine a lot of Democrats and pro-choice folks are celebrating today. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, in conversations I've had with Democrats and pro-choice activists today, they certainly are celebrating. But more than that, and I know you all have seen this today, Democrats across the country, especially statewide gubernatorial candidates in swing states, are mobilizing on this, really trying to build on the momentum that they're seeing from that euphoria that you just played in those clips after the victory in Kansas. I'm thinking of places like Georgia, Stacey Abrams running against Brian Kemp. She cut a new ad today talking about abortion. We're also seeing Democrats in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan really go after their Republican opponents on this issue. And Democrats are saying, look, not only is it easier to draw contrasts with Republicans now that we have these nominees in place, but now we have something tangible, they say, in Kansas to really remind Democratic base voters in particular, this is how you can help make a difference, even when the Supreme Court is overturning Roe versus Wade.
So help us understand a little bit about how the No camp actually pulled this off. I mean, we're talking Kansas. This is a pretty red state, and it was during a Republican primary in the middle of summer. What happened here?
Yeah. Well, my reporting in the past has shown that groups like the ACLU nationally and their chapter in Kansas have been organizing, pumping money into educating voters across the state in Kansas and other places about this exact ballot measure, really educating people, Michael, on the fact that your state constitution is really responsible for your ability to either have access to an abortion or not. now because of what the Supreme Court has done. And so they've spent hours, they've been knocking on doors, they've been educating people. And a big thing about this that even anti-abortion leaders will admit is they say that Democrats did a good job of messaging on this issue, not so much focusing on are you pro-choice or for abortion, but rather saying, are you for constitutional freedoms? Do you want to make a change to our state constitution or not? And that language is obviously more appealing to moderates and even conservative voters, as we've seen in the numbers from yesterday.
So, Donna, I've known you a long time. I've come to know your voice and your passion on this issue among many. But I just want to get your reaction to what happened last night in Kansas.
Well, I think one of the things that's really clear is that the abortion issue, while we had thought that it was theory that it could be animating for voters, last night's result in Kansas proved that to be true. And so I think now the question is how Democrats really can seize on this, Democrats who are overwhelmingly pro-choice can seize on this victory in Kansas and turn that into electoral victories for candidates. And I think it's incredibly inspiring. Voters were saying, you know what, we want to protect constitutional rights, and we're not about taking away those constitutional rights. And I think this is very instructive for Democrats going forward. And we always knew that the polls showed that that voters, Republicans, Democrats, and independents strongly support abortion rights. And last night proved that theory to be absolutely true.
So, Ashley, meanwhile on Earth 2, what's the reaction from Republicans from within the state and across the country? Any signs that they're going to be looking to try this again?
Well, look, even when you looked at the Republicans in Kansas or the vote yes camp, so the people who wanted this amendment that would essentially take away constitutional protections for abortion, even their language sort of recognized the basic political reality in the polls, which is that the majority of the country, and that's not just Democrats, believes in some sort of access to abortion. Now, different people draw the lines in different places, but things like exceptions for rape, incest, and the health of the mother have broad support. So when they were talking about trying to get people to vote yes, they were saying, look, this wouldn't actually ban abortion. This would just take the constitutional protections out of the state constitution and kick it to the legislature, which, to be fair, in effect, would have banned abortions. But I think the big point is that Republicans, even going into what they tried to do in Kansas, understood that this is not the easiest thing for them to message, because it's not about messaging. It's about how voters, men, and especially women feel. And the Supreme Court decision and this amendment is out of lockstep with mainstream America, and not just Democrats and not just the progressive left wing.
So, Ashley, all indications are still very much in play that Democrats are going to be facing a very tough midterm environment. There's no doubt about that. Do you feel like they got a shot in the arm from yesterday's vote in Kansas?
Absolutely. Every Democrat and White House official and Republicans as well I've spoken to today and late last night says that there's no two ways about it. This verdict in Kansas is good news for the Democrats, right? There was a question about, just as Donna mentioned, how galvanizing would the issue of abortion be? It doesn't always rate as a top issue on polls. Just how much would that Supreme Court decision help galvanize voters in November? I think one question that we don't yet know the answer to, and they've also got a shot in the arm because this issue outperformed Biden in Kansas, and it underperformed support for Trump. But again, what we don't know is voters in Kansas were showing up in many cases specifically to vote on an abortion amendment. Now, when you have an actual candidate, that's a candidate who has a position on abortion, but they also have a position on inflation, on the size and scope of government, on the Second Amendment. And so I do think it will be interesting to see just how much this translates to actual candidates, where Roe and abortion rights is part of that platform, but maybe not necessarily the entire platform.